Welcome to Superside, the 2006 FIM Sidecar World Championship. Round 1 of the 2006 series comes to Germany, and we're over in the east, 60 kilometres from the Czech Republic border in the town of Schleiz. Torrential rain greeted the competitors for the first day's racing at this Schleiz track. The track actually uses the roads around the town of Schleiz. It's 2.361 miles, 3.8 kilometres around, the lap record held by Steve Webster and Paul Woodhead from 2004. Now the first events were the match races. The teams split into groups after qualification and then race against each other to progress towards semi-finals and the main final. And in the first of the match races, the slowest qualifiers battled it out. The winners would automatically go through to the semi-finals, and they would be joined by the next fastest teams. And it was number 24, Slovenian Milan Spendel with English passenger Peter Hill, that took Heat 1. Heat 2, number 16, Ben and Tom Birchall, the young British pairing, up against Steve Norbury and Scott Parnell on the number 36 bike, and the Austrians, Bernd and Michael Grabmüller, on the number 77 Eurostop machine. Well, Ben and Tom Birchall making their debut year in the World Championship. They had a wild card ride at Assen last year, but it was Grabmüller's that took the win and went through to the semi-final. Heat 3, we're getting into the faster boys from qualifying now. Number 91, Sebastian Delanoy, the Frenchman. Number 9, Thomas Fuchel, the Czech. 55 there, Mike Rocher and Adolf Harney, the German-Swiss pairing. And in this one, Andy Laidlow and Patrick Farrance, 5th in the world last year. And it was Laidlow and Farrance that took heat number 3 and booked their place in the semi-final, trying to progress towards that all-important final 6. Well, these are the top boys from qualifying. 3rd, number 88, Taro Mannanen and Pekka Koismanen, and they were runners-up in the championship last year. Teammates, Pekka Pivarinta and Aki Alto. And on pole position, the reigning world champions, 77, Tim and Tristan Reeves. Well, horrendous conditions here at Schleiz, and the spray appalling. Very difficult to see what's in front of you there, but Tim and Tristan Reeves got the whole shot and pulled away from the rest. Number 11, the Austrian Jos Moser. 66, Stuart Muldoon and Paul Napton involved there as well, with Richard Gatt and Paul Randall bringing up the rear. But a convincing win for Tim and Tristan Reeves, and they're through to the semi-final. Well, there was just about enough time for the teams to dry the bikes off and relax a little bit before the first of the semi-finals. Well, the sun was coming out, but the track was still wet. Milan Spendel and Peter Hill, they're winners of the first heat. They're in this first of the semi-finals with Mike Rocher and Adolf Harney, and Richard Gatt and Paul Randall on the number 8 machine getting a good start from the second row of the grid. On board with Richard Gatt, and who gets into the first corner? It's Milan Spendel, Slovenia's only sidecar rider. English passenger Peter Hill, very experienced, won the Isle of Man TT with Dave Molyneux. And Spendel really showing quite well here, but Gatt and Randall eventually got the power down and forced their way to the front. The RGB Tools machine running well. Moser, the ex-ice racing champion, slipping back into the clutches of Ben and Tom Birchall. But it was Gatt and Randall that took the win from Rocher and Haney. Now Gatt and Randall automatically through to the final, and the winner of this heat would automatically go through to the final, and they'd be joined by the next 4 fastest riders from these 2 semi-finals. So can Tim and Tristan Reeves secure their place in the final with a win? On the outside of the front row, number 66, Stuart Muldoon and Paul Napton, the Scottish rider, making a full return and a bit of bumping and barging into the first corner, and that looked like Andy Laidlow going off the track. Number 88, Taro Mannanen and Pekka Koismanen. This new team with the fellow Finn Pivarinta, the team Suzuki Finland. But it was Muldoon that came through to take the win ahead of Tim and Tristan Reeves. So Muldoon through to the final, as was Richard Gatt and Paul Randall. They were joined by the 4 fastest losers, Tim and Tristan Reeves, Taro Mannanen, Pekka Koismanen, Pekka Pivarinta, Aki Alto, and the Frenchmen Sebastian Delanoy and Nicolas Bidot. So the first 25 points of the season up for grabs here. Just 3 laps around this 3.8 kilometre circuit. Not enough time to really get settled into it. Delanoy getting a bad start there. Oh, and contact at the first corner. That's Tim Reeves ploughing into the side of Richard Gatt and Paul Randall. So not a good start for the defending world champion Reeves. He was out on the grass. Don't know whether he's got back onto the track. But up front at the moment, Stuart Muldoon and Paul Napton. They've got the two Finns chasing them, and just ahead of us, the French pairing of Delanoy and Biddot, who made such an explosive debut into the World Championship last year, qualifying second at Assen in their first ride for about 4 years at World Championship level. Gatt and Randall now trying to play catch up after that first corner incident, and you can see this beautiful Schleiz circuit. Beautiful when it's dry, not so good when it's wet, but as you can see, the track conditions drying out. And that's Tim and Tristan Reeves back in pit lane, so damage from that first corner incident. Well, the format of these match race finals means that they will finish in 6th position because they qualified for the final, but I'm sure that's not where they want to be. Gatt and Randall still trying to make up time. Oh, what's happened? Well, that looks like the sidecar wheel arch has come off. That's obviously been damaged in that first corner incident. But at the checkered flag, Tero Manninen, victory from Sebastian Delanoy and Nicholas Biddot. That's Manninen's first World Championship win. Muldoon and Napton third, Pavarinta. Gatt takes 5th. Reeves credited with that 6th position overall. And then 7th to 10th based on their finishing times from the 2 semi-finals. Well, a very happy Tero Manninen, and look at the damage on the Muldoon machine there. Top 3 on the podium. Whoops, don't drop that. First World Championship win for Manninen. Delanoy and Biddot in 2nd position for the French, and Muldoon and Napton dropping back to 3rd place after leading in the final stages. Well, we asked the riders what was their view on the race.
When they all started smashing into each other, we went inside and that was it. We were clean going until the gear lever snapped.
La course s'est très bien déroulée, ça s'est bien passé.
Well, Sebastian Delanoy explaining that it was his first time at Schleiz, but he likes the track, was very happy with 2nd position, and wants to thank all of his team for their efforts in making it possible, really.
It was a good race. We had a little, like everybody else, had a little crash in the first corner, but rest of the race was quite good.
But the question was, what happened to Tim Reeves?
I got a reasonable start, went up the inside of Richard and just braking as normal, and then I don't know if I got any help from behind or not, but I just all of a sudden shot forward and smashed into the side of him. Yeah, I don't know really.
While the large crowd here at Schleiz waited for the next races in the Sidecar World Championship, the sprint race. Taking to the grid, the track still very damp, conditions tricky for everybody. Ben Birchall there and his brother Tom, the passenger, enjoying being at the World Championships. Wet race, don't think there was any doubt about that one. And ready for 11 laps around the Schleiz circuit. Everybody struggling for grip on the tricky conditions. Mixture of wet tyres and intermediates, I think, on these sidecar outfits. But at turn 1, it was number 44, Pekka Pavarinta, and his new passenger, Aki Aalto, taking the lead from Richard Gatt and Paul Randall. Everybody being a bit more careful through that turn 1 this time around. The match races saw a lot of incident there, so people wanting to get round and get into the race. Tim and Tristan Reeves, defending world champions, up into 2nd position, chasing after Pekka Pavarinta and Aki Aalto on that Team Suzuki Finland machine. Reeves, of course, new sponsorship for this year. The Eastern Airways squad has Billy Galros in the team as well, but Galros not figuring much at the moment. His winter preparations messed up with sponsorship issues, but I'm sure we'll see more of the Swedish driver in the future rounds. But at the front, it was the Finns pulling away from the defending champions, trying hard to stay with them. Unusual for Reeves not to be at the front as they head down that superb hill and back towards the town of Schleiz. There's Mike Roscher and Adolf Harney ahead of Gary and Dan Knight. but there seemed to be no one that could live with Pekka Pivarinta in these tricky conditions. Tim and Tristan Reeves struggling to keep them in sight. And further down, Tero Manninen making up ground on Stuart Muldoon and Paul Napton on that immaculate green SM racing machine. And they were chasing after Richard Gatt and Paul Randall. Local riders, Thomas Nagel and Michael Hildebrand in the pits, as was the Belgian, Patrick Hankey. Obviously tyre problems, I think, or tyre choice wrong for these conditions. Pivarinta still pulling away from Tim and Tristan Reeves, who look to have settled for a safe second. P2 plus 6 seconds on third position was the board. And in third position it was now Tero Manninen ahead of Stuart Muldoon. Number 99, Dan Morrissey and Rob Biggs in the pits. They're obviously not happy with the conditions either. Pivarinta sliding round that final chicane as he cruises up towards the checkered flag. A convincing win. Pivarinta, of course, won 3 times last year. This is his 4th victory ahead of Tim and Tristan Reeves. Manninen makes it 2 fins on the rostrum. Muldoon 4th. Mike Roscher, Adolf Harney 5th. Gary and Dan Knight 6th. Laidlow, Gatt, Austrians Moser and Waffler, and Billy Galros rounding out the top 10. Well, there's our winners. Pekka Pivarinta and Aki Aalto. Tim and Tristan Reeves second there. There's Aalto on the left, Pivarinta on the right. And that's Aalto's first World Championship victory, and it's actually his first World Championship race as well. Well, let's get some comments from the riders.
I tried hard for the first 3 or 4 laps and decided that it just was better to save the tyre and get a finish than go for a win, really. But all credit to him, absolutely fantastic ride from Pekka, and I think he's going to be a bit of a problem, to be honest.
Kilpailu lähdettiin oikeastaan niin kuin ennenkin ja vesisadetta oli tiedossa.
Well, winner Pekka Pivarinta explaining that the conditions were wet, but it stopped raining before the start of the race. All the teams were on rain tyres, and he thought that was a big advantage for him. But he just drove his own race, didn't really think about anybody else out there. Just got on with the job and was very happy to win. Coming up, the main race.
So this is the big race coming down onto the line. The conditions, as you can see, a little slippery, and well, from conditions earlier on in the day and from yesterday, it's been wet, hasn't it, Ian?
Yeah, conditions really bad for these riders. Tyre choice is just something everybody's struggling with at the moment. On the grid there's people with wets, there's people with slicks, there's people with intermediates. Nobody knows what to do. The rain's stopped, but the track is still soaking wet and there's standing water everywhere.
66, Stuart Muldoon.
What's the ball doing on? Intermediate. Leave it like that. I've got wet on the front. Leave it like that. It didn't feel too bad, really, like that. Yeah? You can ride the chilled up front, can't you? Both got slicks on. That's all right.
Well, as I say, the discussion about tyre choice there. Tim worrying what everybody else has got. Everybody looking to see what everybody else is running. Delanoy on full wets. Tim Reeves on intermediate rear and sidecar wet front, and the Finnish lads on slick. So real mixed bag there, Kenny.
Yeah, and it started to rain. I can hear some rain bouncing off the camera cover, but hopefully it won't continue. But you can see there's a lot of standing water on the track. We're on board now, and it's very, very wet.
Very tricky into this first corner. We've seen a lot of incident in the earlier events, but everybody just about scraping through, slipping and sliding their way along. The guys on slick tyres are really going to suffer in this opening stages, but then if we don't get any more rain, maybe they'll come into their own.
Yeah, so Ben Birchall there on the 16 outfit following Richard Gatt at the moment, and we're looking back still, and it looks a bit drier at the top of the circuit rather than down on the start straight. Am I wrong that thinking?
No, possibly. I mean, the hills here will disperse the water quite quickly. I just saw in the background Stuart Muldoon, 4th on the grid, putting his hand up to retire on this opening lap, so that's a disappointment for the Scot. Just look at the concentration on Paul Randall's face there.
Yeah, we're getting a face sore, visor full of moisture very soon, but the 16 outfit's still there at the moment behind Richard Gatz, and of course said Paul Randall.
Slipping and sliding as they try and get that 200 horsepower to the ground. I don't know what tyres Birchall's on. I know Gatt and Randall are on slicks, so they're being very tentative, and I would assume perhaps Birchall is too.
Hoping for the sun to shine and the track to dry out to make it up in the later stages of the races. But with tyre joints, as you say, just look at the water down here. There's a great deal of water on the track there. But on slicks, I don't think it's such a good idea, is it?
Well, it doesn't look it at this stage, does it? And there's Mike Ross and Al Honey on the black machine coming up. Well, that was a bit of a dive bomb manoeuvre.
Yeah, well, I'm coming through no matter what.
And just listen to the wheel spin. On board with Sebastian Delanoy, Nicholas Biddulph, second position, chasing Tim and Tristan Reeves, just getting a face full of spray, and that's the view that the driver and passenger have got. Billy Gowross there, teammate too, Tim and Tristan Reeves, chasing Richard Gatt, Paul Randall, but it's Tim Reeves, got the whole shot out in front. He's got clear vision, but Delanoy and Biddulph haven't, but are they going to squeeze? No.
Well, the two Gap boys riding with their leathers from last year, owing to the fact that their original set of leathers, matching the outfit, completely soaked through from the earlier race, so everybody feeling the moisture, and leathers really, once they get wet, are not the most comfortable things to be wearing.
No, for sure, and there's Thomas Nagel and Michael Hildebrand, the local German riders, making a wild card appearance, having a steady ride through. That looks like a wet tyre on the back of that machine. Back with Richard Gatt and Paul Randall, and they've got number 37, Gary and Dan Knight behind them now. As I say, Gatt definitely on slick tyres on the grid. Wasn't sure whether that was the right choice, but that's what he's gone with. Gary Knight up the inside. No, not quite. So desperate, braking down that hill into this tight chicane. Very easy to lock the front tyre up, especially in these conditions with the wrong tyres. And behind Gary Knight is number 36, that's Steve Norbury and Scott Parnell.
On a circuit that you are fairly familiar with, Ian, how many overtaking opportunities are there?
There's quite a few on this track. Now that they've changed it slightly, the chicanes offer really good overtaking opportunities. Coming down through this sweeping section through the woods, not a lot of overtaking here, but we're now coming into the tight chicane that really does offer an overtaking opportunity that we saw Mike Rocha take on that first lap. And Gary and Dan Knight, no, not quite. Everybody being very cautious. Listen to the wheel spin.
Oh, it's spinning that up nicely. If he's got a wet tyre in the back of there, it's probably working quite well, but it'll be starting the chew. There's the race leader.
Yeah, they're getting some grips from somewhere there, Kenny, lifting that sidecar wheel through there. This bit of track, yeah, definitely drying out up here, but it's that bottom part of the circuit. Andy Laidlaw and Patrick Farrance ahead of Thomas Fuchel, third and fourth. Pavarinta on full slicks and Mannanen on full slicks, now beginning to make some inroads through the pack. Back with Delanoy, and just look at those awful conditions at this part of the circuit.
Can't say it's doing our onboard cameras a lot of good. Look, they've got a stream of spray coming up from the back wheels, so it just gives you some idea of how much water there is on that top part of the track.
That rooster tail coming off, and I can tell you from experience, it's not nice following somebody in these conditions. And that looks like Delanoy going up the inside of Reeves into turn one. Well, we've got clear track in front of us now. Now Delanoy's out of the spray.
So back off Richard Gatt and Paul Randall again. That was Paul just leaning across, the passenger at the following outfits. So I'm quite sure where they are in the race at the moment, but
they're down on the outside of the top 10, and that looks like Dan Morrissey and Rob Biggs behind them. But the passenger, very crucial where he gets his weight in the wet. Too far out, spins the rear wheel, not far out enough, and you just slide.
Well, that's one place for a photographer to hide, in the bushes. He must be a secret one, but he does have the yellow vest on, so he must be official.
Well, there is Delanoy and Biddulph now beginning to put some distance between themselves and the reigning world champions. It's a fast call, just sliding a bit wide on the exit there, Delanoy. Two different sets of tyres. Tim Reeves, intermediates, rear and sidecar, wet front. Delanoy, full wet tyres. Andy Laidlaw and Patrick Farrance still holding third place, and a great ride from the Czechs, Thomas Fuchel and Jiri Perchulek in fourth position at the moment. And there's the two Finnish boys, the Team Suzuki Finland machines, beautifully turned out machinery, the two Finns, and they're closing in on that third and fourth position dice. So they've had a win apiece so far. Can they get on the rostrum or even up the front? Now Delanoy's in amongst the back markers.
Oh, this is dodgy.
Just about see what's happening at the moment.
Just imagine we can't see where they're going, so they can't see where they're going, really, can they?
No, I mean, this is just an awful time for the drivers, and he's been forced wide, and that's Reeves going through. So in the confusion amongst the back markers, Tim and Tristan Reeves have retaken the lead, but they've still got more back markers to come as they come to the final chicane.
That's, of course, the same chicane that we saw that horrendous crash last year with Jörg Steinhausen, but safely they all walked away and were okay. But it's a particular chicane where everybody takes that last-minute dive, don't they?
Yeah, and that looked like Reeves got through the back markers cleanly. Delanoy, well, he's forced his way through now, but losing the lead to Tim Reeves. Well, you can see the sunshine's coming out now.
That track looks to be drying now.
Definitely a dry line appearing. That's going to hurt Delanoy. Andy Laidlow still in third. Fourth position now, Taro Manninen, Pekka Koismanen. Pavarinta up to fifth, on board with Richard Gatt and Paul Randall again. Well, they've been taking it steady on those slick tyres in the opening stages, and that's Tim and Tristan Reeves behind them, so they're going to go a lap down.
Somebody pulling over. I couldn't quite see who that was. Was that one of the Finns?
I think that was the French pair in the clubs.
Oh, okay. Those of you that are currently listening in Finland, just like to say moi to you all.
Tim and Tristan Reeves now closing in on Richard Gatt and Paul Randall. Obviously the intermediate wet front tyre choice was the correct one. Reeves about to go up the inside. Will he make it this? Oh yeah. Gaddy's just let him go by. Thumbs up from Paul Randall there. So Tim and Tristan Reeves now settling a commanding lead as this race goes into the closing stages. There's Manninen, third position.
I have to say the Finns have driven so consistently this weekend. You say a winner piece on the Saturday in the early races, and well, I think at the end of this race the Finns may well lead the World Championship.
It's looking good for them at the moment, and there's Pavarinta now about to snatch fourth position off of Andy Laidlow. I think Laidlow's got a bit of a problem. He's slowed, maybe it's his tyre choice. Richard Gatt and Paul Randall again, well, they're down in the top 10, and they're, well, going past Tim and Tristan Reeves. So they've retaken their lap back. Now that could be a sign that the track's really drying out. Gatt and Randall on slicks, as we've said. Now those slick tyres coming into their own. Tim, Tristan Reeves staying right over on the other side of the track. They're looking for the wet parts of the track. So obviously that wet front tyre of Reeves now beginning to give him some problems. And there's Delanoy, he'll have problems as well on all three wet tyres, but sticking to the dry line for the moment.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be looking for the wet stuff, so possibly he's okay at the moment.
Well, he's coming into the clutches of the two Finns, so he's definitely slowed right down.
Oh, has he?
Dramatically slowed now. And the Finns, well, I think Tim and Tristan Reeves are too far ahead for them to challenge, but they were definitely putting the pressure on Delanoy on this final lap. Tim and Tristan Reeves come through the chicane. Big slide, big celebration slide.
He knows he's got it.
The typical Reeves celebrations coming over the line. Number one. And second and third, the two Finns demoted Delanoy. Poor old Sebastian Delanoy down to fourth place. Andy Laidlow and Patrick Farrance held on for fifth. Moser in sixth. Galros up to seventh. Gatt and Randall finished in eighth position. Gary and Dan Knight and Steve Nornbury round out the top 10.
So the national anthem for the winners, Tim and Tristan Reeves. The question now is, what do the other riders and drivers think about the race?
In the first laps we must be very careful and wait that the track is dry and then push hard.
I mean, the weather here has just been an absolute nightmare. I mean, it's a great place. The people love it here. It's a shame we couldn't have had sun, really. But I think on an even day when the weather's right, yeah, Sebastian is going to be a threat as well as the two Finns, to be honest. So I think it'll be good. I think it's definitely going to be a good championship. It's not going to be easy. I think it'll be hard work. I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. It's been good fun.
Well, Taro Manninen leads the World Championship after round one. Tim and Tristan Reeves second, Pekka Pavarinta third. A winner piece for all those three. Team standings, Team Suzuki Finland at the top of the pile with 115 points ahead of the Team Eastern Airways.
It's been wet and it's been windy here today. Round 2 goes to Castle Combe in England. We'll see you there for top Sidecar racing.